quorum. Thank you all for being here today. The agenda for the board meeting is on page 1 of the board packets. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Ms. Lucier, seconded by Mr. Young. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Thank you. The minutes from our February 24th board meeting begin at page 2 in the packet and run through page 6. Everybody have a chance to review the minutes? Mr. Young moves acceptance of the minutes.
Second.
Second, Ms. Lucier. Correct? Sorry, I didn't see that in here. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you. We have 2 recognitions today. One we're receiving and one we're given, which is kind of nice. First, American Cancer Society Award presentation. How are you?
Hello everyone, my name is Darcy Chaika and I'm the Senior Director of Community Engagement for the American Cancer Society.
I'm Chris Revelle and I'm the Community Manager for our Making Strides Against Breast Cancer Walk in Albany and Warren County.
We just want to come today to thank you for the amazing partnership that we've had with CDTA over the past year. It's really grown and become a tremendous, valuable relationship in the Capital Region to help your riders, our community members, and the entire community that cares about or is touched by cancer. And so we're very grateful for that. In particular, I want to highlight the pink seat that you put on your buses this year. I think that was such an innovative way to raise awareness for the 1 in 8 women that will be faced with a breast cancer diagnosis in their lifetime. And that was really just such a touching tribute, and we're very grateful that you could bring that awareness to the community. Also, your partnership this past month through our colorectal cancer campaign in partnership with CDTA and the Cancer Services Program, we're really proud of the way that you were able to share the resources available to community members if they need cancer screening, which is critical to have healthy lives. And so I wanted to thank you for both of those projects, and Chris is going to talk to you a little bit about the walk and your meaningful engagement there.
Yes, so we want to thank you so much, first and foremost, for some of the fundraising that you all helped to do. We raised over $789,000 as a community for Strides for the Albany Walk this year, and over $100,000 in Warren County. And so thank you so much for being a part of that. It's such great to have you as a part of the Strides family in that way, but also in providing some of the transportation, actually all the transportation from our exterior. I was in the golf cart, so I wasn't transportation. So all of the transportation from the exterior lots, which was really critical, especially for some of our survivors. It really made the experience so much more accessible and able to be had for them, and then also for our fundraisers to be able to be a part of that. So we have this wonderful, stunning recognition piece for you today, which we wish was like an 8x10, but it takes up too much table space, so we really were cognizant of that and wanted to present that to you. And so thank you all so much for being a part of this.
Thank you very much. Tom, and thank you very much. As you know, and CBTA and its employees are big supporters of community activities, especially things that affect health and wellness for the region. And we appreciate that we had the opportunity to be a partner with you in these events. So thank you very much.
We do have a parting gift for everyone. Some beautiful pink pens as a thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Our second recognition is a 35-year service award to Mr. Bill Plunkett. All right. Carm bailed out on us, so I'm going to have to stall for a minute here. How are you? Good. Thank you very much. There he is. He's back. Sorry. That's all right. Bill is a master technician in the Albany division. Today we're celebrating a 35-year service award for Bill Plunkett, who has been with the CDTA family since 1981, making sure that our buses and fare boxes are running smoothly. Bill started as a cleaner in the Troy division and quickly worked his way up to first-class mechanic in our Albany garage. Spent 18 years in that role before becoming master technician and focusing on taking care of the fare boxes on our buses. Bill's transit routes run deeper than his tenure with us. He has a long family history with CDTA, dating back to our United Traction days. His father, Bill, was a driver in Troy for more than 20 years, and his father-in-law, John, was a mechanic for 35 years. And the connections don't stop there. Bill is married to our administrative assistant in finance, Sherry, who has been with us for 24 years. Between the Plunketts, you're looking at nearly 60 years of service at CDTA. In their spare time, Bill and Sherry enjoy going to local car shows and showing off their restored 1978 Bronco, a project that Bill and his son worked on together. They're also avid NASCAR fans. Bill, thanks to you and your family for all your years of dedicated service. Thank you. And for the memories over the years. Congratulations.
Yeah, we're usually on the left. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a little fill in the blanks here on fare boxes. What Bill does is troubleshoots fare boxes, but most importantly, there's one on every bus, obviously, and it's the gateway. Whenever the box fails, and they do fail a lot, right? I mean, just normal course of operation.
Yes.
Dollar bill gets jammed, someone sticks the wrong thing. Well, you're basically disabled. You can't take any money. This guy fixes it, clears it, and then assures that the system is engaged and the box is talking to the mothership. So really, he's our revenue guy. Without Bill's work, that revenue might be in danger, right?
Yes. Another 35 years.
Yeah, and he said we need the money. I think he's been listening now. We need the money. Thanks, Billy.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's another quiet behind the scenes function that you don't think about that function until it's not that something's wrong. Yeah, something's wrong. Yep.
I hope he has an understudy.
Well, I think, just for a second, we have created what's called the ITS unit, which is Intelligent Transportation System. So now there's a number of people that form a unit in our maintenance department, but also has kind of a double report to Chris Desley and his shop, so that not just Bill, there's several people who can cross over, but he is by far and away the expert in fare box technology. It is cool.
Committee reports. Mr. Owens, Performance Oversight Committee and Audit Committee.
Sir, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, the committee met last week here on Wednesday at noon. We had one consent agenda item. This relates to a contract award for the upgrade parking system at Rensselaer. So in 2001, we installed a system to control and collect the fees for the parking garage and surface lots at our Rensselaer station. At that time, the system was competitively procured. The system software and hardware are in need of an upgrade to support payment card industry compliance, PCI compliance, and future expansion plans. This is a sole source award. Staff did find the pricing, and the committee reviewed it. We found the pricing to be fair and reasonable, and it was noted that this vendor is a Women Business Enterprise, WBE. So at this time, we're looking for a motion.
Resolution 10 on page 13.
A motion by Mr. Young awarding a sole source contract to Access Technology Incorporated.
Second.
Second, Ms. Lucia. Discussion on the resolution.
Just want to be sure, Mr. Chairman, that the minutes reflect that we did the usual search for sole source, which,
Yeah, and we did, which we talked about in the committee meeting. This is a local vendor who, was easiest in a sense to procure because they've been our vendor for a period of time, but it's also limited availability of this technology to this vendor, so. As Joe and I discussed, there are Lionsville company, so here's to Rensselaer County and Minority Business Enterprises.
And are they a DBE and WBE?
Stacy's not here, I don't know if we can get the YouTube video.
Okay. I mean, I would like to just reflect that if they are, put that also in the notes, because that's a federal and state difference if they're both.
Mhm.
It's important.
Good point, thank you.
Right, and it says in the notes just WBE, so just clarify that it's also not
DBE.
DBE as well.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution's carried, thank you.
We met as the Inform and Audit Committee as well. Our internal auditor, Sarah Matros, provided her updated now, a 3-year audit plan. This was developed after the completion of the annual risk assessment process. It contains a combination of identified risk areas, required audits, and processes that were determined to be materially significant from a risk and cost benefit perspective, so they were also put on the audit plan. We discussed the process, how it was put together. We talked about timing, and ultimately the audit plan was approved by the audit committee. We talked briefly about investments. The investment committee had met earlier that same day. I just received a draft report today, so that'll go out to the board members later this week. There was very little movement in the investment portfolio. We did have a discussion about the recent continued rumbling about rate increases at the federal level.
we're also going to look at the other bank that I mentioned as far as.
Yeah, that's right, we will do that, yep, on CD perspective, yep. We received the monthly reports, financial highlights, mortgage tax receipts were under budget for February, but still exceeding budget for the year. Wages were slightly over budget, miscellaneous expenses were slightly over budget due to an accrual issue. Utilities under budget for the month and obviously for the year based on our winter. Year-to-date revenue is down 1.5%, and the expenses are down 2% year-to-date. So still in a satisfactory cash flow position. On the non-financial side, total ridership was up 6% on the month. 2 PMIs not on time, missed trips 47 during that past month, and mean distance between service interruption was a little over 18,000 miles. 14 preventable, 35 non-preventable accidents, and 96% customer complaints were closed within 10 days. We did talk about Mr. Young's son-in-law and his fabulous promotion. And then we received, in executive session, we received a monthly security update from our security director. No action taken during executive session. Subject to any questions or discussion, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom, and just a point on Georgie's question, on page 16, it does appear that this is a DBE vendor, though it wasn't applicable in this procurement. At least if I'm reading that correct.
Yeah, and we'll focus on.
I have a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Under the administrative discussion under the monthly financial report, I'd just like to mention again that where the numbers are worked out very nicely, it's not the best thing to be looking at reduction of expenses to match your revenue. That can be an actual disaster. The other thing I just mentioned, although it's not a favorable trend, is what I'm saying. The other thing I'd just like to mention that my son-in-law's position is executive director of the Federal Highway Agency, which is the highest civilian position other than appointees. He sits right under the Secretary of Transportation.
It's indeed a very wonderful promotion.
Does that mean that he's a Democrat? As a matter of fact, he has to register as an independent. Really? I tell you his political affiliations.
Can we touch upon the 6% increase of total riders, comparatively speaking to last year at this time?
Well, the last couple of months we spiked up. Remember, we compare it to the same month last year. In all fairness, ridership's been consistently up. In my report, you'll see it's likely that we're going to break our all-time record again, finishing over 17 million. The March numbers, though, were compared to February numbers. We're compared to a really bad weather month last year. If you recall, lots of snow, lots of cold. This February was very mild, so that was enough to swing us. But our line has been 1% up, pretty much consistently throughout the year. 6% a spike.
Well, and what I also noticed is gas prices are at an all-time low, and ridership is
Right.
up 6% comparatively
We
speaking.
are beating the trend.
The gas
time and
price
time and time.
at this time last year, last February, was up to about
That's a good thing.
And nationally, the ridership trends are down.
Right.
So, I mean, when Carmen says we're bucking the trend, I mean, we heard that at the legislative conference, the ridership numbers across the nation are down. And that's, they think, predominantly because of gas prices being down. So I think it's great that we've connected with riders who are staying loyal to the system, even though it is less expensive for them to drive a car if they have a car.
And a lot of that is the work that we've done in universal access agreements, the work that we've done to, over the last several years to make the system easier to use, easier to understand, and all of this kind of equates into, as Dave rightfully says, the system is attractive, and once people try us, they tend to stay with us. And are we keeping everybody? No. Are we growing as fast as we were 3 years ago? No, but we're growing, which is where we're really bucking the trend.
We take roughly 70% of our riders, we take them to work. I think that's a good catch, because if you're used to going to work on the bus, there's a pretty good chance that you find that a pretty convenient, not only the expense, but the convenience, I think is a major contribution. As you said, Carmen, we made the system as easy as we can for people to use.
Good news.
Thank you, great comments. Any questions for Tom? Okay, governance committee reports. Most of our meeting was actually an update from Lisa Morello. Lisa provided us with an update on lobbying activities. She advised that leaders from the Assembly and the Senate were holding conference committee meetings through last week to develop a state budget for fiscal year 16-17. News reports are indicating that the major items have been worked out in the budget and the fine details remain, but there was a quote from one of the leaders today that the fine details can sometimes get in the way, so hopefully that doesn't happen. So Lisa updated on her meetings with our elected officials along with Carm. Some of those I know others have attended as well, and I thank you for your time in making those meetings with either Carm or with Carm and Lisa. It's good that our elected officials see us, board members and staff. We're not just asking for money, we're making a case that we are a good investment, and we've used dollars wisely that have been provided to us in the form of giving back service to our customers, providing more service to our customers. So I think all of those messages are resonating, and we're getting good feedback from our electeds.
I don't want to let the chairman off the hook that easy. You know that this is a tough time of year for him. It's tax time, but Lisa asked for him to be at meetings with leaders. Majority leader, chairwoman of the finance committee. It makes a difference when your chairman comes to one of those meetings. How much do they remember? I don't know, but I think it makes a difference. It's sort of a check mark on a box. That's a very important check mark on a box. So I know it's a tough time, but I got a couple more of them for you to get to before April 15th. It helps. It really helps.
Thank you. One of the other items that we needed to discuss is that we have to do an annual reaffirmation of CDTA's mission statement. We have a board assessment that needs to be completed by the individual board members, and then submission of some documents that outline what we do, how we do it, and how successful we are at what we do. Most of this is done by staff as part of the regular reporting routines, but we will need to complete the annual questionnaire that Carm or Kathy will send out to us, and that will be part of a submission to the authority's budget office. What we do need to do, though, that is time sensitive, is I would ask for a motion to reaffirm the CDTA mission statement, and we discussed this in the governance committee. There were some questions about, revisiting the mission statement and what it says, and we agreed that we would do that as part of a board retreat when we set our board retreat agenda for this coming year. So could I have a motion
I'd like to make a motion
Thank you, Ms.
to
Garcia.
approve resolution number 11, found on page 17, to reaffirm our mission statement as written.
Thank you. Second, Ms. Figueroa. Discussion?
I think I was one of the people that questioned the,
I wasn't naming any names, Mr. Young.
I did look at it some more, I still think it's a little blah, but maybe we can get into a more of the retreat.
I'm gonna send you
Jazz it
the
up.
others as you requested. Then I'll call you and ask you.
Have more blah.
I looked at it too as, Mr. Young raised the question. And I think a retreat, a discussion about this is in order. We really have changed a lot in the last 5 years, just the stuff we're just talking about. And some of the things that we have on our agenda regarding mobility management, even just changing 2 or 3 words probably will better capture who we are. I don't think it needs a rewrite, it probably needs a modification.
Should you check with the people on the Hill before you change the words?
No, they're okay with that. I think just the process is, what they want to make sure is that the board does exactly what you're saying, is engaged in the development of the mission statement, believes that the mission statement is being adhered to, and every year is, not in this case, not this board, is forced to look at it and ask themselves that question. I think it's a good thing.
Do they provide any guidelines for mission statements?
Amanda's talked directly to the ABO, the answer.
The answer is obviously no.
We're not gonna say.
This should be fun.
Well, the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola said, whatever you do, don't forget we make soda.
That's right.
With you, sometimes you get too caught up in the words. Sure you do.
One of the other topics that we discussed was my need to select a nominating committee for the election of officers.
You need to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. On the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Denise. Thank you all. So, nominating committee. I have reached out to Denise, who has agreed to chair the committee, and Joe and Norm will serve on the committee with Denise. Thank you for your service. The committee will give us a recommended slate of officers for the board to consider and vote on at our April board meeting next month. We also reviewed the board and committee calendars for 2016. The committee the calendar as it presently stands does not contemplate holding meetings in August and November, but we will keep dates on the calendar as placeholders in the event we need to call a meeting. The November meeting will probably be the board retreat meeting, the date for the board retreat. But I did indicate to the governance committee with their agreement that I would send out the calendar to the full board, ask for the full board's comments on any questions or concerns with the calendar, and that the governance committee would revisit that at the April committee meeting, and then make a recommendation for the board to consider approval of that at the April board.
As you know, Mr. Chairman, I still am concerned about a public authority not holding monthly meetings.
Understood. In other conversation, Mr. Young talked about the recent terrorist attacks and the expertise of former City of New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He suggested that Mayor Giuliani might be an interesting speaker for us in Albany. And Carm indicated that he would look into whether there was the possibility of having that happen.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to reflect that I had any concerns about the security that CDTA has put together. I think our security team have done an outstanding job. In fact, I think CDTA has been commended throughout the country as being recognized as one of the most secure transportation facilities in the country. But I do happen to know that Mr. Giuliani has some particular expertise, and the thought was that there was a possibility that he might, if he looked at what we have, that he might have some additional information that we might be able to go forward that would put us even in a more secure position. So I think if Carm, if you can reach out to him at some point in time, and I know that he's a busy man, but he does live in New York State, and there is a possibility that he might honor us with his presence.
Right. Thank you. The next meeting of the committee is scheduled for Thursday, April 21st at 11:30 here at 110 Watervliet Avenue. Any questions? That concludes my committee report. Thank you. Ms. Figueroa reporting for Mr. Miller, Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee reports.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Planning and Stakeholder Relations Committee met here at the authority offices on March 24th at 12:30 p.m. Mike Collins presented the budget proposal for fiscal year 2017 that was reviewed by the committee and is ready for approval. The balanced budget represents a 1.3% increase over last year's budget. Based on the governor's executive budget request, we have additional flexibility to move funding between our operating and capital programs. We received an unexpected increase in our federal maintenance, which in part allows us to increase our federal maintenance line to $10.6 million. This represents a draw of 70% of our 5307 federal allocation, which is, I think, the same as last year, or just a slight increase? A little bit higher. Okay, it is a little higher. Okay, state operating assistance will increase by $900,000, and we budgeted a $500,000 carryover from the prior fiscal year. We eliminated the use of reserve accounts for the first time in 7 years, which is a major budget milestone.
We could have mentioned there that
There is no additional
there is no
reserve.
choice.
That's right.
The reserve accounts are, at this point, only support the level of reserve that is required.
Very true.
I think that there is some surplus money hiding there.
Good point. We budgeted a 3.1% increase in wages, including additional headcount for operational efficiency. We have also either reduced or contained costs in two major areas. There's a minimal increase to healthcare costs because we modified our program and we have eliminated lump sum payments to the employee's pension plan. And the budget includes an increase in non-personnel expenses, primarily maintenance related. It also includes a $400,000 decrease in fuel costs. The 5-year capital plan is in your packets and it's fully funded in year 1. It includes $3.6 million from the state, which is $1 million more than last year. The plan includes 12 new fixed route buses, 6 new Star buses, and initiation of the Uncle Sam Transit Center and the Larkin Washington safety improvements as part of our BRT projects. At this point, Carm will give us a brief overview of the 2017 budget.
Well,
Although I
honestly,
think
Mike,
this outlines it pretty well.
no, you did a great job. Mike and I kind of put a condensed version of what was presented at planning. Maybe I just have one
Sure.
slide that you didn't
Feel
cover.
free.
You covered
Okay.
That's about as good a budget presentation as I've heard.
We can thank Mike for that.
Oh, there you go. So, I think Denise covered most of this. We talked about that, right?
Yeah.
We talked
No,
about that.
the mortgage recording tax, I don't think we did.
Well, we budgeted a small increase in the mortgage recording tax line, and that's really looking, actually, Plank and Phil Perella, who were the primary architects of the plan, went back and looked over the last 10 years. We talk all the time about this line going like this, but if you look back over the last, actually 20 years, you can trend this. You can't predict exactly, but you can trend it. So we're pretty comfortable with popping it up just a bit. And frankly, there's flexibility there. If it doesn't hit, we
Think
can.
of your imagination.
It's a figment of my imagination, but you know what? I've got a pretty vivid imagination. And Denise covered that. We covered the capital. Maybe this is where I could just spend a minute or two. And where are we going based on what we have in front of us? And Dave and I and Georgie have talked about the ridership increases, pretty much sustained now for almost 6 years. And it's really a tribute to the people who sit around the table here. We've developed a number of programs that people are interested in. I think we've kind of hit on what the capital region likes and doesn't like, and we've really now started to move into major employers. In fact, John and Jamie are planning an event with our newest partner at Albany Medical Center. I think that's sort of gone somewhat unnoticed. We now have a universal access agreement with one of, if not the largest employer in the capital region, and all, as I understand it, all 10,000.
Yeah, it's the whole organization. They're internally, they profess, I wouldn't say ecstatic, but just short of ecstatic about the results, which are averaging between 13 and 15,000 rides.
You've got about 10 or 12,000 people with ID cards who now can use them on buses. I mean, now our job, working with AMC management, is to encourage more of those people to give us a try and to use our system. So we're using that. John and Jamie and actually planning and other people get involved in this are talking to other employers. So that model is really what's fueling the ridership increase and kind of keeping us immune, so to speak, from the gas price change, which is really what's going on. We've talked a lot about mobility management and the opportunities, whether it be in bike sharing, car sharing, or the notion that we could be an oversight agency for the taxi industry, which, frankly, what we're talking about there is helping them to be more of an option in the region. Who would have thought 10 years ago that we would be talking about providing options? We would be running scared, saying, well, that's going to take rides away from us. You read about what Uber and Lyft are doing around the country. In fact, we're already opening our line of communication with Uber and Lyft in anticipation of New York State allowing that to happen here. We need to be partners with other forms of transportation so that we can give everyone who uses our service and those that don't more options, more travel options. The more we do that, the more we become entwined with all those choices, I think the better off we're going to be. The second to the last bullet down, I think, is a little bit of a challenge to us, because as we do this and as we become more successful and as we become more entwined in the community, there's no doubt that people now know us and know what we do and think we're doing a good job. But I think the expectation increases tenfold every month the more we do this. That's a challenge to all of us now. We have to meet those expectations. People expect clean buses now. People expect buses to be on time. People expect innovative programs. People expect balanced budgets. People expect increased service. Now we have to deliver. And I think with the staff and the group of employees, the 600 people, 650 people who work here, I'm 100% confident that we can meet those expectations. However, it gets harder and harder as you keep raising your own bar. And really that's the vision of the board. I pretty much have stayed close to that vision, and I think the vision really hasn't let us down. We could get back together and reaffirm those issues, but I think if you stay close to that, you'll be okay. And then lastly, I don't think it's a challenge, but it's there. Innovation and technology, especially technology, is changing so quickly. What we offer to customers 6 months ago that we thought was really innovative is almost old hat and passe already. So it's a bit of a challenge to our group to keep that sort of on the upswing. We've got a lot of technology that we're close to unveiling, AKA Navigator, CDTA Navigator, and our new communication system. I guess maybe sometimes I underestimate the work that goes into that. Navigator, we probably have, I don't know, 10 people, 12 people, 15 people working pretty close to full-time on that.
I would
At least.
full-time.
At least. It's a challenge. And, with fair payment, we don't want to get it wrong. We can't get it wrong. So we're close. Actually, you'll notice the room's a little light today. People that you're used to seeing, Fred and Chris and a few other people are down on Long Island at Clever Technologies, which is one of our vendors, getting smarter. Getting a little closer to the technology, understanding thought process behind programmers and things of that nature. So that's somewhat of a challenge and an opportunity for us. So in a nutshell, I think the budget sets us up to do that. The budget does not include anything that is currently being debated. As Dave said, it looks like the budget is complete. What we have in the budget is what the governor proposed. We're hopeful of some additional funds, and if that is forthcoming, we'll be back probably in April to make a pleasant budget adjustment. But it's a good piece of work. Hats off to everybody. Phil and Mike lead the way. But one of the things that's really changed in my career here is how the budget process works. It really is a team effort across the department. I mean, Phil starts this. Actually, he starts on Thanksgiving, and people are saying, "Wait a second, Phil. April's a long time away," but he has people engaged in thinking about what they're spending, what they need, what they have up their sleeve, what they have planned, and how that might impact the budget. So, great job, and the committee was very engaged. The planning committee probably talked about this 4 times.
Every month
Yeah,
since
every month.
November, right?
So, thank you, and I think it's a solid plan.
Resolution 12 on page 19.
Motion by Mr. Young approving the fiscal year 2017 operating budget and the proposed fiscal year 2017 to 21 5-year capital plan.
Second.
Second, Mr. Owens. Any discussion on the resolution?
I have one, Mr. Chairman. And we've talked about this before, and it's my ongoing anxiety that we try and put a budget together based on the whim of people buying homes or refinancing homes. And I think once the present legislative session is resolved, it might be a good time to sig our police and our lobbyist people on a different source of revenue that would be more predictable and more sufficient to be able to focus the real number that we could put our budget together with. I don't know what that number is. Maybe it should just be the general operating budget itself. But there ought to be a percentage of something
A
that's
little more known.
going to happen all the time that you take a percentage of to give you the number that you need to run the operation. As I said, to continue to guess at how many people are going to buy a house in our Fort County area this year, or going to refinance a house, is a pretty weird way of trying to, use an accountant, probably know better than I, but
It does seem like an odd source of funding for a transit system. I think we've agreed on that.
that advice comes from 50 years of banking.
Well, it's interesting because that mortgage tax is almost equivalent to our federal maintenance number. And, you can argue we may or may not, well, at this point, we do have more ability to predict in the future our federal maintenance for the next 5 years at least, but for the mortgage tax, you're right on, we have no way to control that.
so far.
There's a lot of our revenue we don't control.
So one of the things you just mentioned does give us a little bit of support, and that is the federal government's program, which we're now up to using 70% of, which in the past we've always said 50% was a reasonable level for the safety of the organization. 20% higher than what we've all agreed is a better financial support for the organization, so.
Just throw the yeah button. What's changed is, at least in the last 3 years, state participation in the capital program. And
Yes.
I've been working on a chart, I haven't given it to you yet because we don't have the final state numbers, so that you can track the increase in STOA and the increase in the capital appropriations. So hats off to this governor, because it's happened under Governor Cuomo's watch, and that has allowed us to change our position on federal maintenance. We would rather be at 50, but it's been the infusion of state money that is not as flexible as the federal money that has allowed us to modify that stance.
The big challenge still remains, Carm, that we have to continue to provide about $10 million a year for the safety program of replacing buses. And nobody seems to quite get that idea. Very nice that it worked out this year, and thanks to a lot of people doing a lot of hard work to do it, but that just shows the challenge there is for every year. It isn't as though everything is now locked in place and those funds are going to just appear every year. You're just going to have to go to work, beat the drums, and keep pushing to get the money. Because if we don't continue that replacement program for at least the next 2 years, we're falling behind what our goal for safety of the public.
You know what, listen, I'm not a spokesperson for what's going on at the Capitol, but these capital appropriations pretty much for the next 2 years have taken that off the worry list. You know, not completely, but you know, if all this money comes through, correct me guys if I'm wrong, you know, the purchase plan is in much better shape today than it was 3 years ago when, boy, we didn't know what next year was going to bring.
We financed them, that's
Right,
that's what we did.
I mean, we're to the point where if there's additional money, you know, you could start talking about making early payments.
Yeah, that would be a nice thing to do. We have those 2 leases, it'd be nice to get rid of one of them or both of them.
It's a much better place today than it was 3 years ago.
I think we're gonna discuss this, our trip to Washington, a little later, but I think it's a good time to kind of chime in and talk about this, is when we went in and met with our elected officials, we talked individually specifically of how this 5-year federal plan impacts us and how we can retroactively use some of those funds to pay off some of the buses that we financed in the last 2 years. And, you know, Mike can speak more to that, but I think that was worth its weight in gold in having those discussions with Schumer and others, and how we can better work together to fix those issues that we individually have as a system.
And you know, I keep coming back to the additional funding at the state level with the additional funding and flexibility at the federal level is really playing to our advantage now. You know, it's not happy days are here again by any stretch. You know, frankly, it's job security for guys like me. I mean, if there weren't any problems, you don't need me around. But it's a lot. I think you can sleep a little bit better at night than you could 3 years ago. And, you know, and with the FAST Act, you know, we know now what's going to happen for 5 years. You know, there's additional money, albeit not a lot, but there's additional money, and there's additional competitive program where we've traditionally done very, very well. That allows us to buy more or pay for buses or more technology, which we still need. Right.
Well, there's one thing that we probably can't count on, and that is what originally started our new fleet of buses was the federal transportation act that, how many buses did we buy that first year?
First year we were here,
Oh gosh.
a couple hundred, I think.
I think it was 200,
We don't want to do that.
which we only had to pay 10% of. And the state paid 10%, and The rest of the Canadian government.
Those were the days.
That federal budget, that transportation budget is basically designated solely to the refurbishing of the infrastructure of the country, and I doubt if there's going to be any capital expenditures come out of it. It just doesn't. I don't believe it. Which is unfortunate, because if they would give us even part of that $10 million a year that we need, it would soften the people up on the hills to the fact that we're not only banging up there all the time, but also we're trying to do our best to achieve funds from other sources.
All those in favor, before I forget that there's a motion on the table on the floor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Budget and capital plan are approved, thank you.
And there was one other item on our agenda for the planning committee, and that was a presentation from Ross Farrell, who provided an update on major projects and activities, and that list is in your packet. The next meeting of the committee will be at noon on April 21st, here at 110 Watervliet Avenue. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for Denise?
Just one other observation, Mr. Chairman, since Denise mentioned Ross's report, I'd just like to again mention the financial side of that, those projects that Ross mentioned to us. We're still looking for necessary funding to number one, complete the Uncle Sam project, number two, to complete the river road
BRT.
and the
Washington Western BRT.
Western project. And those are not insignificant sums of money that are needed.
No, lots of zeros.
And one other thing we were on, assuming that we get those funds to complete those projects, especially the second two, I'm not quite sure that we've timed out the increase of operating expense that's needed once those projects are in place. Some of it will be offset by consolidation of some of our existing lines, but a lot of it is going to be brand new, which is going to require additional buses and additional drivers. So those are things that we have to look at in future budget. Did we put any of that into the 5-year plan, Carl?
It's all memory.
But do we do the operating?
No, the capital, the 5-year plan.
That's capital, isn't it?
Yeah. But operating, you're right, we're nipping away at it because we, in this year's budget, have some modest service expansion plans. And most of it will be aimed at to-be BRT corridors, so that the step up in service hours when we get to BRT is not as great. You know, we've got a rough number that we've thrown out. We'd like to nip away at that number before we get to the point where the board is forced to make sort of that yes or no decision that we had to make on Route 5. Yeah. I don't want to do that.
And we have seen, though it's been a little while, when we approved the capital plan, when we approved the projects, I think one of the things that Ross presented to us was the operating costs, as they were presently, so that has changed. As Carm said, as we've added some service here and there in those corridors, the burden of that entire cost will be somewhat offset. But we will need to, as the capital components move along, we will need to make sure that we're engaged in the operating side of that as well. And I'm sure we will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. CEO's report, Mr. Basil.
Thank you, Mr. Stockrell. My report's in your packets, and I can skip around because it sounds to me like we've talked about most of this. I know the members will give their perspective on the DC trip that several of us made a week or two ago. From a staff perspective, we heard a lot of great things about FAST. It's always interesting to hear the political process, and I'll leave it to the members to talk about their impressions of our meetings with Congressman Tonko and Congressman Schumer. I can tell you, I'll brag a little bit, that we were the only upstate property that get a few minutes with Senator Schumer. So Mike and I made sure we found out if anyone else had the pleasure of meeting with the senator, who is, I think we've developed a big fan. This is some of the things that we're doing line up with, I think, his objectives. Pretty much, if you look through my activity report, I've spent the last month. I am a registered lobbyist. It seems like that's all I've been doing, but I think that's time well spent. I think it's bearing fruit, and there's a lot of outreach activities that we're doing. You know, we've put some of the issues to bed at Lark in Washington. You know, basically what that involved is our staff doing a lot of listening and a lot of tweaking around the edges to make that intersection plan a little bit more conducive to what the neighborhood has in mind, and I think that it was all time well spent.
You can't rest your laurels on that, so that's only part of the project.
Yeah, that's just, yeah, there are
Just one little,
there are several small to large projects within the Washington Western corridor, but hey, we'll take every one, and when we knock it off and get it done, that's one step closer to a full-scale BRT on that line. We talked about ridership, but it just, you have to pinch yourself every now and then and say, is this real? I keep going back to those of you that remember Steve Bland. We spent some time with Steve in Washington, who's now the CEO in Nashville. He left me a note when he walked out the door, and we were at 13.5 million, and said you should be ashamed of yourself, and you shouldn't consider yourself successful until you hit 16, 17, 18 million. Well, we're at 17, and I remind him of that all the time, and he just chuckles and says, keep going. But he issued that challenge to me. It was a little note that I sort of took to heart. With all your help, we've gotten that done. Construction activity here, we talked about the room, but we are just about done downstairs with the bathroom, locker room, et cetera, shower project. In fact, we're going to do some small thing in-house when we're done. April 8th, April 10th, somewhere in there. If you get a minute, not necessarily today, but if you get a minute, we'd be glad to show you what we've done. And really the oldest part of the building, 50 plus years old. It's been completely transformed from a pretty embarrassing situation to something I think is going to be, at least for our employees, a showpiece. We invested a lot of money, but it was well worth it. And we have phase 2 now, where we'll do some additional locker rooms, really in the maintenance end, bathrooms, locker rooms. But it is a major, major step up. So if you get a minute next couple times you're around, take a walk down. We can show you through. Well, if you're a male, we have to get permission to go in, but we can Mark can arrange that. It's a really good job by he and his guys to coordinate the project. It's all concrete. It's the old-fashioned concrete, so they're drilling through concrete walls to change things, and they relocated I don't know how many walls.
we know the difference.
Yeah, it's to somebody who's seen it, it's amazing.
Have you reached the point that it matches Lance's apartment?
No, that was phase 2. Is now we have to get Lance to match with all of our stuff. We talked about the meetings with leadership, and I thank Dave for coming with us. Earlier this month, I always point this out every single year because it's one of my favorite events. We recognized those employees in the bargaining unit who achieved perfect attendance. I guess I'm an old-fashioned Catholic school kid. That was a big deal when you had perfect attendance. Grammar school and high school, I still think it's a big deal. I think if you come to work every day, you come to work on time, and you do the best job you possibly can, that good things can happen for you. We had 75 people achieve that award. About 50 were at the lunch. And Corey can probably attest to this. You look around the room, and almost every one of them has an exemplary record in other areas of their job performance. It just goes naturally that if you come to work every day, usually, not always, but usually, you tend to perform very well. It's a great group of people. It tends to be the same people with a few new additions every year. Some people drop off, some people come on, but 75 people exemplary attendance out of 550. That's a pretty good hit rate, and it's just great. We have a little lunch, and they enjoy getting together. No agenda. We just thank them and move from there. 14 new operators joined middle of the month. Great to see them. And I think just one last thing. You may have seen a lot of activity in the business review, and maybe wondered why all of a sudden they're covering us. We've made an effort to kind of reconnect with them. It is the region's sort of business weekly, and wanted to make sure that we were on the radar screen. So hopefully more good things to follow. Because a lot of
Subscribe, it's a daily update.
yeah, you get the daily updates online. But you keep taking my password away. There might be a message in there. And the last thing, the other night we attended the Albany County Legislature's Mass Transit Committee meeting. They asked for a update on what we do and how we matter to people of Albany County. We did that, and I think they're pretty well informed. Tom knows most of that group very, very well. Interesting people, to say the least. But I think the reaction is good. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Questions for Carm?
I guess just a statement, you mentioned it earlier, and I feel the need to put it on the table here, about the whole, I think it's very exciting to be working with Lyft and with Uber. I have expressed concerns in the past at committee meeting about their track record in terms of accessibility for people with disabilities. They have been sued across the country for discrimination, refusing to comply with the ADA. And while I think we need to create opportunities, we need to make sure that those opportunities don't discriminate against any particular populations. And so as we work with them, I think we can show leadership in impressing upon them the need for them to provide service to people with disabilities. And so I would just urge that to be on the radar screen. The legislation that the state is considering has an exemption, literally exempts them from having to transport people who can't get into the vehicle on their own. So in other words, if they can't transfer out of a manual wheelchair, they don't have to pick them up. No other provider is allowed to discriminate that way, So I think that's the kind of stuff we need to be looking at if we're going to be working with them and supporting that.
How do they help in New York City?
What they do is they will call some of the accessible cabs in New York City. That's how they're
So they know whether they're
right. That's how they claim they're complying with the ADA, by calling the accessible cabs that exist. But what's happening is the industry in New York City is actually diminishing, the taxi industry. The medallions are going down because people prefer Uber, and so if even though they have a requirement for accessible cabs in New York City, if the cabs don't want to operate anymore because it's not lucrative for them, you're not going to have accessible cabs. There is a requirement in New York City to have them. The other thing is that legislation, that insurance legislation that they're trying to pass, excludes state and local governments from regulating them. So that's the other thing. So you can have a state and local government say you have to have accessible vehicles. So I just think it's something to be aware of. I know there's a huge push for it upstate, and it would provide a lot of flexibility for people and more options for transportation. But we just need to make sure it's not.
Uber a group, or is it individual people?
They're individual people who are dispatched through a group, and
it's a corporation.
It's a corporation, yeah.
or
They are a corporation.
They are a
as
corporation.
all these private individuals that have offered their cars for certain. I tell you, it's a fantastic thing. The last time I was in the city, I was with somebody that had one of their, gadget phones, and, usually you have to stand on the corner and wave your hand, they dial their phone. 2 minutes later, a car pulls up. It's not a cab, but it's one of Uber things, and we're off and running, and we would probably wait at least 10 minutes on a busy street to have found a cab that would stop right.
Yeah, it's a great service, it's just that, you know, it's a serious problem.
And Denise, Uber and Lyft actually just became business members of APTA when we were at the legislative conference. I'll reach out and ask either the mobility committee or the access committee whether there's any discussions at that level about trying to ensure that there's service. And I have not, until you said that, I haven't heard nor did I know that was an issue.
Yeah, it's a very serious issue, you know, and like I said, they've already been sued in other states, refusing to take people with guide dogs, other things, you know, and their position is that they don't have to comply with the ATA, which is ridiculous, you know, but you shouldn't have to sue in order to get transportation, so.
Well, it's another reason for us to be closer to the subject
Yeah,
rather than
exactly,
farther from the
exactly.
subject. And that's what, you know, frankly, I see that as embedded in our mission. You know, that we need to be closer to this, not farther away.
Well, if we have some input, it's obviously a concern that ought to be discussed. I can't believe that there actually is a law that.
Well, that's that's some of the language that's in the legislation the state, is considering, the state legislature's considering. So, yeah, that's a problem.
So this is just.
Outside of New York City, that they couldn't be regulated by any local government, so.
I think it's like anything probably, although soon enough isn't soon enough. The more it grows, the more accessible, hopefully it will become.
Right.
Well, you don't know.
You don't know, exactly. You just don't want to exempt them from having to be accessible, that's the point.
Right.
Well, particularly adult, because you really don't know who you're dealing with. You're dealing with the man on the street, you're dealing with
Exactly.
any individual that has a car and has some free time and is willing to put their car.
Into business, yep, it's terrible.
That's probably their position, these are all independent contractors.
Right, and that is exactly what they're trying to say.
That's just so sue the independent contractor, it's probably not their tough, it's a tough,
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Anyway, so thank you, I just wanted to raise the issue, make sure that we were aware of it.
Thank you.
Good point.
Sorry.
Did we get a vote on the budget?
Yes, we did.
Pass that.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry. I want to make sure.
So thank you, Carm.
You think? I think you're welcome.
Carm and Georgie have already spoken a little bit about the legislative conference in Washington. Several of us did attend that conference. I happened to be on the very front end of the conference and missed most of the conference. I was in DC on Friday for a meeting of the task force on member collaboration, which ran from 4 in the afternoon until 9 in the evening. I did get dinner out of that, just for the record. I was provided dinner, not by CDTA, but by the committee. No vendors, it was an APTA provide. The following morning, I started my day with a transit board member meeting to discuss the conference schedule. The conference will be in San Antonio this April, late April, early May. I believe it runs from the 29th through the 3rd. I'm registered presently. I don't know if anybody else is registered, but if any board members are interested in attending, certainly love to have you there. It does look like it is going to be a very educationally driven content for the agenda. So I think it would be well worth it if you can make it.
Do you have a copy of the agenda?
I will forward it to you. I'll forward it to you. San Antonio is not too hard to get to. Southwest, one stop and Southwest takes you there. The rest of my day was actually filled up with other meetings. On Saturday, we had an APTA board meeting that ran from noon until 5. 4 hours of that were in an executive session, and it was painful, to say the least. Sunday, I had committee meetings essentially all day. I started at 10 and finished at 5. The last meeting of the day, I had the pleasure of chairing the Transit Board Member Committee meeting. We had a 2-hour meeting. Georgie was there. It was a good meeting. We had a lot of reports from subcommittee chairs. There's a lot of activity going on within the Transit Board Member Arena. Again, a lot of information was presented on the conference agenda and encouraging people to attend. We are off cycle this year. We got pushed out of our normal July time slot because of the timing of APTA's annual conference, which is earlier than normal this year. We were concerned, or APTA was concerned, that if the Transit Board Member Conference was in late July and the APTA annual conference was in early September, it would constrict people's ability to attend both. And board members have the highest attendance at the Transit Board Member Conference, the Legislative Conference, and the annual conference. And those happen to be the three opportunities where board members have a committee meeting as well. So I left on Sunday evening. It was three filled days. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of time to goof off, so to speak. And when I wasn't in one of those committee meetings, I was resting. So I look forward to hearing what my colleagues experienced on Monday and Tuesday when I wasn't there.
Okay.
Sure.
The thing that was a little different this year is that there was beating the drum, we got the money to the FAIRS Act. We went up on the hill, they were saying, yeah, that's good, but we don't know where we're getting the money. But, so, it was a little mixed message there.
The expenditures are appropriated, but the money to pay for them is not quite all in place. Correct.
So, I don't know how board members get it. There's 150 board members on that. I don't know how you guys
There's
get
106.
106. I don't know how you get anything done. But
It was painful.
One of our most important jobs being board members is going up on the hill. You know, the conferences are fine and they have different ideas, but a big deal is going up and the representatives seeing you there. Schumer asked about Troy. Nobody prompted him. So it's, things like that are pretty good. And as long as you're a board member, I'm surprised there's 30,000 cities in the United States. 30,000 mayors or managers or whatever. I'm surprised there isn't a big letter signed by all the mayors of every city in the United States saying we need transit money.
It's a good idea.
Don't know if they do or not. They may very well have that.
I don't know if they do or not either. One of those committee meetings that I mentioned earlier is a task force that was created by the current chair to collaborate internally and externally. And I haven't been as involved on the external pieces of that, but one of the groups that they've reached out to is the League of Cities and the Conference of Mayors. So I'll find out, because I know those connections have always existed, but they've tried to put a little more focus this year on cementing those relationships from the standpoint on how each organization can help each other, how APTA can help League of Cities or Conference of Mayors, and how APTA can help, or how they can help APTA. So that's a good point. I don't know the answer to that, but
The general consensus, my feeling is, Congress understands that infrastructure is buses. I don't know if that message was, our guys were always interested in buses and mass transit, but it's getting more involved now, so, which is a good thing, which I think is probably APTA's deal.
some of that is, sure.
So,
Again, those external collaborations help. I mean, APTA does a great job of, and I'm not promoting APTA, but on the relationship side, we only get 20 cents on every dollar of the federal money that goes to transit. 80 cents goes to highways and roads and bridges, and APTA has built strong relationships with the Association of Road Builders and general contractors associations that are involved in highway construction. It's a stronger pitch when we can go in there together, and those associations that get 80 cents on the dollar are very much supporting us in continuing for us to get what we get, and basically lifting the whole pot. So they're great resources, and they're great partnerships in making sure that more money to the extent it can be is delivered for both sides.
And the AGC is the main driver, I would think. And I think they were there last year at the conference. Oh, were they here this year? I missed out. And beside that, I went to the Capitol Grill and there was a steak there for $47 and I turned around and didn't get it. 12-ounce strip steak.
$47. Welcome to DC.
Have a hamburger, Joe?
What did I do now? I went to a Mexican restaurant, I had to come down.
Ground beef instead.
And I went to Ford Theater and saw a play Wednesday night. So, that was my trip.
Thank you, sir. Georgie?
Thank you, Chairman. Let's see, I attended the Transit Board Member Committee and the Legislative Committee. And Dave, first off, I want to commend Dave for all the effort and work he's done with ABDA and keeping us at the forefront of what's been going on a federal level. These conferences, I think that what you get out of a conference of this type is speaking with our peers in similar sized systems and exchanging ideas and keeping us ahead of the curve. You know, we talk about all this innovative technology, but that's how we need to continue to encourage the younger generation to keep using our buses, make it easier for them, and investing in this technology and that sort of thing. I think the trip to the Hill, we went on Monday to visit with Gillibrand's office, and on Tuesday with Tonko and Schumer. You know, they're worth their weight in gold. Again, we get to sit down with them in a closed setting and speak to them about how these federal funds and the legislation that we work so hard to get impacts us as an individual system also, and how they can help us individually. They care about our constituents, they get it, they're pro-transit, and it's good we have stakeholders that are in their district that, you know, stick up for them and they stick up for us, sort of type thing. So it's a marriage of sorts. I think this legislative conference is probably the best one out of them. That one, I do like the Transit Board Member Conference for that same reason, that speaking to your peers and exchanging ideas and forums, it's worth its weight in gold.
Thank you. Corey?
Well, we've pretty much covered most everything, but this was my first year able to attend the conference in DC, so I took some time Sunday morning to do some sightseeing because I knew the week would be busy, but we did have the Welcome to Washington general session on Sunday evening, and then I think a very important point that no one else really mentioned was that Monday there was a good discussion about the fact that even though they did just provide this funding for the FAST Act, we don't do it here at CDT because we're always moving on things, but you can't just sit back and say, oh, we're good for the next 5 years. So there was a big message on that even though we thank the senator and everybody who was involved for the work that they did, that it still isn't done, we still have to keep moving forward. So that's it. Really, it's not 5 years, they said it's, 3.5 or so, and you're gonna have to go back again, so you really have to stay on top of that, so. And there were other sessions on Monday, and then again Tuesday we spent some time, again being my first time there, I hadn't been to the Capitol and see the senator's office and things, so it was, while I was quiet and didn't say anything, it was nice to be there in the presence of everyone, so. And on Wednesday, unfortunately, the meetings that were scheduled for then were canceled due to the WMATA trains being shut down for the day, so I didn't get to do too much on Wednesday.
It wasn't good timing.
No. I was worried about getting my flight back home on Wednesday.
Thank you.
National Transit Legislative Conference and the system shuts down.
Well, Washington has had their share of troubles in their system, so
They're on their way back.
they are.
Yeah.
New leadership.
Wednesday morning, they shut the metro down that night, and there was Uber, I mean, all over the place, it was amazing. I didn't know that's what it was, but there was cars picking people up.
Yep. Well, thank you all, I appreciate it, there were other senior staff members who attended as well, and I appreciate you taking time on a weekend when it's your time off, and taking the time to be in Washington to advocate for us, for what we do. Thank you all.
Who else did we have?
Amanda went, Mike went, Chris went. We passed. I didn't see these
Yeah, we had
guys,
fun
because
at
they were
the back.
coming in as I was heading out, but.
Well, it would be nice if the staff would enter something in the minutes, just so.
Well, I let staff off the hook and said that Carm could be their spokesperson, so if we want that. I know internally, staff has to do a different level of reporting to support their going. So, again, if the board wants something different, but,
I'm only reacting to the
Controller.
past criticism, the controller's office.
Yeah.
So, whatever that method is,
We make sure that we cross that.
be sure that it's someplace in our minutes that it reflects participation. I don't question what you're doing as far as supporting and explaining it, but
dotting the I and crossing the T.
just be sure that it gets someplace in the minutes so that when the
Fair enough.
idiots up there review it, they see something.
Anything else today? We have no executive session scheduled. Any announcements other than what we've already talked about? Upcoming meetings, subject to the call of the chair, are April 27th, May 25th, and June 29th. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Bruce here, seconded by Mr. Young. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Not 1 second today.
Carried? Carried.
Carried.
Sorry, I didn't mean that to be a question. It was carried.